Welcome, listeners, to Parenting Issues. I'm Nicole, your host, and today we're diving into an important and inspiring topic: how to build resilience in children when they face life's challenges. Our guest is Allie Jones, a child life specialist, private practice owner, and author who provides support and tools for families navigating tough moments like illness, loss, and medical events. Ali, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. I'm very honored with the opportunity.
Thank you. So, I am going to dive right in it. We have a lot of great questions ready for you. So, let's start with the basics here. What is resilience and why is it such a crucial skill for kids?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to break it into two parts of that. So the first piece is talking about what is resilience. And ironically, my husband and I just had this conversation a few months ago when he was unemployed. And we didn't anticipate this happening, obviously, but he and his life coach define resilience that it's how quickly you get up off the mat once you get knocked down. And so resilience can look like a child's ability to recover from adversity or to even thrive in difficult situations. So that's kind of the way that I like to think about resiliency. And then actually, I was leading this grief group and we heard about Dr. Shelley Malia, who talks about 5 components of resilience. And I feel like those 5 components can actually kind of guide how we view resilience and how to grow our resilience and all of that. So she talks about the 5 things being the first one, internal assets. So we think about who we are as a person, our personality, kind of our affect. Are we really social? Are we more internal and kind of keeping to ourselves? What kind of knowledge and skills do we have that kind of helps us navigate adversity? And then the second one is external resources. So people around us, our communities, our neighbors, churches, clubs, things that we're a part of that can kind of help lift us up. And then the third is relationships. So there's such a correlation between resiliency and relationships. So how do we foster that? How we ask for help? How do we receive help? And the fourth component is family dynamics. So, our patterns of our family, kind of how our family culture shapes us, that also is a component of resiliency. And then the fifth is faith and spirituality. We are all spiritual beings, we all make meaning in some way. And so, that's another aspect of how we find hope. So these 5 things are all kind of how we have inventory. We ask ourselves, what kind of strengths do we have, and how do we develop those components? And so then you asked, how is resiliency crucial for kids? And I'm sure every parent that is listening knows that we can't shield our kids from things as much as we wish that we could. We know that there's some things that happen that are out of our control that we can't predict. Things like a tough test at school or bullying to losing a sports game, even going as far as an illness or a chronic illness of a child or their loved one. So it's not about avoiding hard things because we know that they will come as children grow, but it's also about how do they overcome them and how do they even grow from them. So
Mhm.
I'll conclude here with defining resiliency, but I actually wrote a children's book series called the Blank Page series.
Oh,
And
amazing.
yeah, it's wonderful, and it's very specific for illness, but the premise is the same in every book. And the idea is that all of us are almost like a blank page, is how we've described it. And beautiful things can be added to it. And we want to see our blank page grow in vibrancy and color and in texture, but sometimes messy marks come. And in this case of the blank page series, it's an illness. But there again can be so many other things that we face. And the question then becomes, is this going to be a messy mark permanently on our page, or could this become something else? Could this grow into something beautiful over time? And so that's again kind of the core component of resiliency is what beauty might come from this mark.
Amazing. I love that. And just to go back a few moments in regards to the five components of resilience, just quickly, it was just something that stayed with me. So, as a parent, could it be a good activity to assess, like, is this like a self-assessment of or an assessment of the dynamics on a whole of your environment, right? So, if I'm a parent, I could have a look at overall internal assets, external resources, how are the relationships, how are our family dynamics, how is our
Yeah.
like just to go over it, because sometimes I think when we listen to information, which was amazing what you gave, but I think if we don't put like a list for how we can use that, it might get lost in translation a bit. So would it is this how you teach your clients, like to actually do kind of like a self-assessment or something?
Yeah, absolutely. And also I think with with the 5 different components,
Mhm.
knowing that some are gonna be higher than others. Like, there's some areas where I'm like, "Man, relationships, I am so solid, but the family dynamics are really crumbling right now."
Mhm.
So, it kinda depends on how full some of those might be, but it's so important to take an inventory of what ones am I cultivating and nurturing, and, of course, focusing on each bucket and, like, thinking through what are some practical things. How could I maybe develop relationships with peers a little bit better in that relationship category? Or maybe I wanna join a support group after I got a really hard, diagnosis, and I wanna further that external
Amazing.
resource as well. So, I think kind of it can be overwhelming to think all 5 of them, but just even narrowing in on 1 can make
Mhm.
a really significant difference when we're considering resiliency.
Amazing. Thank you. I hope everyone has a pen and paper. This is what I always say. There's so many golden nuggets. So thank you. And what do you think makes resilience such a foundational life skill and tool?
Yeah, for sure. So, again, this component of, like, you birth a beautiful child, and then
Mhm.
you just know that hardship can come their way. And I actually think about, why is this so crucial? And I had this thought that came into my mind of when my son was born, my first son. I remember in my postpartum emotional glory crying to my husband, be like, "Look at his baby feet, like, they're so soft, and one day they're not gonna be this soft, and they're gonna be calloused and cut and hard," and, like, you just know that the world can create some of that callousness.
Totally.
And even though it sounds like kind of like a silly thing to get upset about, I
Mhm.
also remember then being like, "Okay, how am I want him to learn how to walk, though, and I want him to learn how to run in the grass and how to walk on the pavement." And, like, yes, even though that stuff did inevitably make his feet kind of gnarly now, when I look at some of his feet, I'm like, "Oh my." But I see it as, like, all the terrains that he has walked through and the things that he has weathered through, and so that's also just kind of a different analogy to relate to why is it so important. So, even though we can't control the things that happen to our children, we really wanna empower them on learning how to walk on their own and how to have these coping skills in their toolbox to be able to weather whatever storm they're faced with.
Yeah, and it's so you're saying it's also just part of the journey, their personal journey. I guess like our wrinkles as we get old, embracing the aging
Yes.
comes with, for them it's the falling over and dealing with bullying, and that kind of resilience is building their journey, right? Until adulthood.
Mhm, absolutely. That's also a great comparison with the wrinkles that can be harder
Right.
to erase, but also just, you know what? It's because I've lived, and I'm gonna take delight in that and see the ways I've grown.
Let's talk a little bit of strategy here. How can parents help their kids turn challenges to growth opportunities?
Yes, so your comment on grabbing your paper and pencil to write down, I'm actually gonna go back to those 5 components, because, again, thinking about how we can add drops in the bucket for our children to help
Mhm.
them change those or experience those challenges into growth opportunities. It's important to think about, how do we draw out their internal assets or develop their external resources or move through all those 5 pieces. And I first want to start by saying that as parents, the way that we help our children grow is actually by growing ourselves and modeling for them what resiliency can look like. And so, a really quick story on that is, I was actually diagnosed with MS a few years ago. And I'm a pretty positive person. Like that's more my baseline. But I also was very aware of like, I don't want to slap on a positive sticker on this all the time for my kids. Like I want them to see me cry. I want them to see how this is hard too and how they can watch mom kind of work through the emotions and not invalidate how I feel.
Mhm.
And one time I had to start giving myself injections. And I knew that if this was just going to be part of my life, that I wanted them to be able to see me do that. And I would grab them by the hands and say, like, look, I'm nervous about this too. We don't like shots in this family. None of us do great with it. But I also like, I'm going to take a moment to say thank you to this shot. Like, I thank you that you're actually going to help me stay healthy. And it's not that I have to, I get to take this medication because I recognize how important that is and how not everyone has access to that. So, all to say, before parents even think, how do I help deposit things for my kids? Start with yourself. Start by thinking, how can I help model that resiliency for them, model my emotions?
I
So,
love
I'm
that. I love that. It's brilliant because I think as parents, we just try to put on a face, and even if we're struggling, we just don't want our kids to see mummy upset or mummy struggling. But I think that is that's such a good point. I think that's a life tool for us to take from this call, actually.
Yeah, no, I completely agree because again, parents want to shield their kids from things and especially their own emotions. They're like, I better not let them see it. But then kids, they feel so safe when they see, like, oh, I'm giving you actually permission to feel this way, to
Yeah,
recognize that I don't have it all together. And it's okay for you to not have it all together too.
yeah, love
So,
it.
yeah, very, very hard that every single parent needs coaching on. Even when I coach other parents on that, I still need the coaching myself, which is like
Mhm.
humbling.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. So, um, thinking I'm just gonna kinda go through, like, different suggestions really quick with these 5 different components. So the first one, internal assets for how you can help your child grow, is this is really, like, speaking into who they are, that their identity is not in what they do or their accomplishments or anything like that. We wanna help build our child's sense of self in a comprehensive kinda way. We wanna help them name their feelings and, like, help them give the words. We wanna even have them, like, have almost go-to statements to go back to. So, an internal asset for my boys is that they are very competitive children, and we do some games, like, that just is kind of part of it, and the phrase that we say in our family is, "We learn from the wins, we learn from the losses," so that they know, like, that's something that they're rehearsing over and over that develops them of, like, "I learn from the losses. It's okay if I lose. I can learn from that."
Love it. I have twin boys, so I'm gonna start using that.
"Oh, do you? Oh, that's exciting."
Right? Writing is a word.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
totally.
So it's
I
a good
love
I think a lot of kids, children are competitive, so I think it's a really great point you have, so thank you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then the next one is external resources. So using your village. So are there school resources, teams, even therapy that you can tap on to help your kid build connections?
Mhm,
And that even kind of ties into the third point is relationships. And so, depending on the age of your kid, if they're
mhm,
younger, you kind of they're reliant on you to be their social connector and their social planner. So, arranging play dates with their friends to help them learn in ways that you're nearby on how to relate to other people, how to have empathy. Me and my mom friends joke that we're like the referees of play dates because we'll just like sit there and watch them and have our own like mom talk. But then when we notice a problem, boom, like all of us take our kids to the different corners and we try to coach them on how to relate and how to build those healthy relationships.
mhm. Amazing.
And then the fourth one is family dynamics. So, again, thinking about how can you foster legacy in your family? How can you be intentional? How can you really help your home be a place of safety? And something like a gratitude jar can be a really helpful way of just building in a lens of how we view the world as a family. Like when my husband got let go from his job, we started a gratitude jar because we're like, okay, buckle up. Like we're facing some uncertain days, but we know we are going to see ways to be grateful and counting our blessings. And we just watched as that jar grew. And I also think that that's one small way to help our boys have, we pray, that similar kind of sense of viewing the world.
Wonderful. I love it.
Yes. Oh, man. So many things that can be said about that. But then the last one is nurturing spirituality. So, um, having a sense of wondering and self-discovery is so important to help kids be open to other views, or also think about how they make meaning, how they can have a hopeful perspective. That's really the last piece on what families can do to help nurture that in their family.
Wonderful. So definitely good that everyone got a pen because there's so much there and so many tips. I mean, that can really evolve a family's way to create resilience. Just by that is like a yearly kind of package. So apart from that, how does resilience tie into emotional regulation and handling those bigger emotions?
For sure. Those are so linked, as I'm sure every parent's like, yeah. The bigger the emotions are, the harder it can be to almost see through the storm. And so their ability to self-regulate is the difference between reacting to hard things versus responding to them. And
Mhm.
so I'm going to give just 3 quick tips on how parents can try to de-escalate some of those big emotions when they come, because also sometimes, yeah, like hard things happen, big emotions come, that can be very valid. And so that's the first thing, is actually the precursor to the second thing is first getting on their level and listening. So again, not slapping on that sticker too quick of like, it's fine, be resilient, but like, tell me more. What are you feeling? I'm here with you. I'm literally getting in your boat of big emotions to try to help understand, so that you can work through what you're feeling, so that we can get to a place of calm.
Mhm.
The second one is validating those feelings. So, helping them understand that it's okay to feel how they're feeling and reflecting back what you observe. So, some phrases that I like to use is, I can see how upset this makes you feel, or it's okay to feel angry. I would feel angry too. So, showing that you care and that you also are giving space for the silence. It's amazing how much this step, it definitely feels like it can prolong, like, when we wanna usher our kids into this state of calm as fast as possible, but if we actually just take a few more minutes to sit with them, it is amazing how you will watch their child or your child start to calm a little bit more. And then the
Amazing.
third,
Mhm. No, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. The third is offering choices and wait time. So, um, as you're helping them kind of feel like you're with them, feel like you see them, then you're also thinking like, so what choice do we have? How can we move forward? This is not an option. Like, maybe the hard thing we can't avoid or get rid of, but what could we do to take the first step? I love the phrase is like, the first step is this. That can be like the hardest part. You did it, like praising them along the way.
Mhm.
Those are some like immediate ways. Those three things are some ways to help self-regulate right off the bat.
Amazing. Do you incorporate any breathing or listen to it as well, right? Like just kind of getting them. I find that sometimes the kids are really, they can't catch their breath. So I tend to just say, just breathe,
Mhm.
and then with what you said, I think it could be a nice like package. Do you teach is that something, the breathing and things like that is something you incorporate?
Totally, Nicole. And that's such a great point too, because I think under the listening to them, validating them, deep breathing is everything, like to help their body feel calm. A phrase I just used with my son the other day, who was super upset about something, is, I can't help you until your body is calm. And I
Amazing.
want and so, I even did some education with him of like, when your brain is using this space of like these really charged emotions, then it can't enter into that problem solving space. So we have to kind of address this first, and through deep breathing, um, sometimes like guided imagery, like taking the brain on a trip to like imagine that you're somewhere different. All kinds of different things like that, rocking or swaying, or even like sensory stimulation of like sucking on something really cold or something like that, that helps alert the brain of other ways to kind of relax. So, so important.
Before we wrap up, I want to share something that ties into a really insightful study from Harvard. The study found that kids aged 4 to 5 who engage in small tasks like household chores, great, develop greater self confidence and responsibility. And that's why I personally recommend the Levelty app. It's a chore tracker with rewards that turns everyday tasks into opportunities for your kids to build these essential life skills. It makes chores fun and, of course, helps you bond with your child in an atmosphere of love and play. Plus, it's a great way to encourage independence. You can download Levelty today. The link will be in the description. So let's get specific. We're kind of coming to the end, but I really want to ask you a few more questions. How
Sure.
can parents help children process tough situations, the tougher ones like illness, bullying, or big life changes?
Yes, I'll do my best to be brief on this too. So, when those things happen, there's a few different ways on how parents can help. And maybe what I say sparks other thoughts, like how it did for you too, Nicole. So, I'll just kind of scratch the surface. But I like to think of this as empower, don't enable. So, how
Mhm.
can you empower your kid in their choices, in their reasoning, in their problem solving, but not enable them and hold their hands so tightly where they don't have independence to learn or to grow? So, the first thing is really, again, trying to be empathetic and giving space for how they're feeling. Tell
Mhm.
me more. I'm here to listen. Do you want to talk? Staying calm. Oh, my word. As a parent, is so important. And then I also like to think of my role as a parent as being a canvas for a child. Like, as they talk to me, I'm kind of like creating this picture that they're describing. And sometimes I literally do that. Like, as my child is telling me about bullying that happened on the playground, I'm like, let's draw it out. Where were you? Where were they? What happened? Giving them a vehicle of communication, oftentimes play is so powerful through that to help them work through how they're feeling or what they're needing to process.
Mhm. I
And
love that.
then
Mhm.
yeah. Oh, man. There's so many different ways you can do that with play. And then helping them consider the choices. So, again, you're not solving the problem for them, but you're laying out the choices and saying, what control do we have? It's not a choice to not get this shot, but what can we do to make this a little easier? Or if they're worried about getting sick, we don't give them the answers of like, no, no, like false assurance, you won't get sick. But we're instead saying, well, what can we do if you do get sick? How can we manage that?
Mhm.
And then finally, using your people as a parent. So, you as a parent need your village, the child needs their village. So, if your child is facing hard things as a parent, you need a place where you can process that of people that can lift you up so that you can continue to be on the front lines with your child. And they also need to hear the same message that you're sharing, sometimes from somebody else. It's amazing how it's like I can
Yeah.
tell my child the same thing 10 times, but then their cool coach tells them something that all of a sudden that resonates so differently.
Mhm.
So, using your people is another way of just trying to help your kid, taking their hand and helping them take the next steps through the challenge that they're facing.
Amazing. Honestly, it's been really great advice. Ali, it sounds like resilience is as much really about connection as it is about independence, which is something quite new that I learned today. So I'm sure the listeners did too. So thank you, Ali, so much for sharing all your wonderful insights and expertise today. I'm sure everyone's notepads are full. This has been such an enlightening conversation. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, Nicole. Very grateful to talk about it.
And before we finish up, where can listeners find more about your work and resources?
Absolutely. So you can email me at Allie, Allie, at childlifetogo.co. And then you can also go to my website, childlifetogo.co. I have resources, my books. You also can find me on Instagram and social media, and I'd be happy to connect more.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ali. And thank you to our listeners for joining us on parenting issues. And we'll see you next time.